So picture this scenario for a second. You have, you've been waiting all week for a package to arrive.
Oh, constantly refreshing the tracking page. We all know that feeling.
Exactly. Checking it every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because you found this incredible item of clothing online, like maybe from a brand based halfway across the world, or, maybe it's a piece you actually bought in person while you were traveling abroad.
Right, surrounded by the romantic ambiance of a foreign city, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
you're tracking the shipment, checking the updates, and finally it's on your doorstep. You bring it inside, you rip open the packaging, the anticipation is just building.
And then the moment of truth.
Right, you pull the fabric out, you hold it up to the light, and your heart just completely sinks right into your stomach.
Because it's this very specific, very crushing realization. You don't even need to put the garment on to know the geometry is just visibly wrong.
I mean, you realize instantly that this piece of clothing is never, ever going to fit. It is completely, fundamentally wrong for your body type.
Your height,
Yeah.
your proportions, yeah.
All of it. The excitement just evaporates in a split second. And, it is immediately replaced by a very specific, heavy kind of dread.
Oh, for sure. And that dread isn't just about being disappointed by the clothes themselves, right?
No, not at all. It is the absolute dread of the return process.
Because the return process is inherently fraught. I mean, it requires confrontation. It requires navigating some kind of bureaucracy.
Oh, totally.
And it requires articulating a specific problem. And for you as the consumer, that feeling of dread is magnified exponentially when you realize you have to navigate that entire return process in a language that is not your native tongue.
Right, which is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. Because you aren't just dealing with a tight sweater. You're dealing with, a linguistic obstacle course.
A very tricky obstacle course.
And just to acknowledge our episode focus right off the bat, our source material today is an English learning guide centered entirely on navigating these specific retail environments.
Right, so because of that, we are intentionally going to keep the pacing comfortable, clear and highly accessible.
Exactly. This deep dive is designed to be easy to follow. We want it to be perfect for learners who just want to absorb natural conversational English without feeling rushed or overwhelmed by complex jargon.
The overarching mission of our analysis today is to extract the exact natural phrasing needed to return or exchange items. We really want to move beyond, textbook English.
Yeah, that rigid textbook English that nobody actually uses.
Exactly. We're looking for the nuanced, polite vocabulary that native speakers actually use in the real world, because real-world interactions, especially in customer service, they require a level of conversational diplomacy.
I totally agree. Nobody wants to walk up to a cash register and sound like an automated robot demanding compliance.
Definitely not.
So we're going to examine the mechanics of these interactions, the psychology behind the words, the cultural expectations, and we're jumping straight into the deep end with a phenomenon from the source material that, anyone who has ever clicked add to cart on a foreign website has experienced.
Ah, yes. The infamous crop top catastrophe.
Yes. It's such a great anecdote from the text. It perfectly encapsulates the disconnect between digital expectation and physical reality.
It is painfully relatable, honestly. So walk us through the scenario outlined in the text.
Okay, so the shopper in the source material buys a sweater online from what they describe as a cool European brand. Now, this shopper is responsible, right? They know their size.
They've done the basic prep work.
Right. They have worn a medium their entire adult life. Their whole closet is full of mediums. So logically, they order a medium from this European site.
Makes perfect sense.
Right. And they even note that the sweater looked incredibly relaxed and comfortable on the model in the pictures. But when it actually arrives, it is an absolute disaster.
It's a total collapse of the standardized sizing system.
A complete collapse. The shopper describes trying to put this medium sweater on, and it is so incredibly tight that they can barely stretch the neck hole over their head.
Oh no, that feeling of being trapped in the fabric.
It's the worst. And when they finally wrestle their way into it, pulling and tugging, it doesn't drape like a relaxed sweater at all. It finishes somewhere just below their ribcage.
So it essentially looks like a tiny, trendy, extremely restrictive crop top.
Exactly. And, if we pull back and look at the broader implications of this anecdote, the source material highlights a massive illusion we all kind of buy into.
The illusion of international sizing.
Yes. Because as consumers, we have been conditioned to believe that a medium is a standardized universal measurement. We treat it like a centimeter or an inch.
We treat it as an objective truth, which it absolutely is not. The source heavily emphasizes this. A medium in an Asian market is drastically different from a medium in the United States.
Oh, completely.
And a medium in Europe operates on an entirely different scale again. We act like there's some international sizing treaty that all nations signed, but there really isn't.
There's no treaty. It's chaos. And that brings us to the second fantastic example from our sources, which deals with physical retail. It's the Italian jeans phenomenon.
Trying on denim abroad, always a risk.
Huge risk. So the text shares a story about a shopper who is on vacation in Italy and decides to buy some authentic Italian denim. Again, in the U.S., this person knows their exact numerical waist size.
They probably have it memorized.
Yep, memorized. But they walk into an Italian boutique, they look at the tags, and the numbers mean absolutely nothing to them. They are all in the 40s and 50s.
So the numerical conversion itself becomes this immediate barrier. You are suddenly doing algebra in the middle of a boutique just to find a starting point.
Right, you're literally pulling out your phone calculator. But what the source points out, and I think this is a crucial distinction, is that even if you sit there and perfectly calculate the mathematical equivalent from your home country's size.
Right, even if the math is flawless.
Exactly. Even if the math is flawless, the garment is still highly likely to fail you in the fitting room.
I found that part fascinating. Why is that? Why doesn't the math just work?
Well, it's because sizing isn't just about circumference, right? It is about the cut and the cultural aesthetic of the tailoring itself.
Well, that makes sense. Different regions prioritize different silhouettes.
Exactly. The source notes that the Italian jeans were cut fundamentally differently from the relaxed American fit the shopper was used to. Italian tailoring often favors a much slimmer, more tapered silhouette through the thigh and calf.
So even if the waistband technically matches the math, the rest of the leg is constructed for a completely different body type.
Or just a completely different stylistic preference, yeah. And so the shopper in the text ends up in this hilarious but physically uncomfortable situation in the fitting room.
They describe the fit as being so intensely tight that they physically couldn't bend their knees to sit down, right?
Yes. The text captures that classic, desperate fitting room joke, where you say, I can stand in these, but I cannot breathe.
You are essentially taken hostage by the denim.
You really are. It creates a fascinating consumer dilemma. How do you navigate a globalized retail system that fundamentally lacks underlying standardization?
The source material makes it abundantly clear that relying on the letter M or a specific familiar number is really nothing more than a false security blanket.
A total false security blanket. Reading through these examples, it instantly reminded me of a major concept in language learning. Have you ever encountered the idea of false friends?
Oh, certainly. In linguistics, false friends or false cognates are words that look or sound identical in two different languages, but they carry entirely different meanings.
Right, exactly. They trick you into a false sense of comprehension.
Do you have an example for the listeners?
Oh, yeah. The classic example for English speakers learning Spanish is the word embarazada. It looks and sounds almost exactly like the English word embarrassed.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, so a tourist makes a silly mistake, they want to apologize, and they say, oh, estoy embarazada. But they didn't just say they were embarrassed. They just announced to the room that they are pregnant.
That is a phenomenal analogy. If you trust the false friend blindly without understanding the local context, you end up in a very awkward situation.
Thank you. I was pretty proud of that one.
Yeah.
But international clothing sizes operate on that exact same deceptive principle. They are the false friends of the retail world.
That's a really great way to put it.
Yeah, just because that small white label says M for medium in a boutique in Tokyo or, a department store in Rome, you cannot trust that it signifies the same spatial dimensions as the medium you wear back in Chicago.
You are essentially dealing with a completely different dialect of sizing, and assuming fluency there will get you trapped in a sweater you literally can't breathe in.
Precisely. That framing really completely changes how we should approach international shopping. You're encountering a different vocabulary of dimensions entirely.
And this structural problem sets the stage for the core tension explored in our source material. Because once you have fallen victim to these sartorial false friends...
Once you realize you are stuck in those jeans that prohibit sitting.
Right, or that sweater aggressively compressing your ribcage, the physical discomfort is really only the first phase of the problem.
Because you can't just leave the clothes in the fitting room and run away.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, but if you order them online or if you actually want to buy something that fits, You have to talk to someone.
The immediate next phase is the communication crisis.
Exactly. The problem isn't just taking the restrictive clothes off. It's figuring out how to explain this dimensional disaster to a salesperson without sounding, entirely ridiculous or offensive.
Or, as the source text explicitly warns against, without sounding like a malfunctioning robot.
Yes. This is where we transition from the physical reality of the fit into the complex linguistics of the fit.
Because how we describe the failure of the garment is just as important as the failure itself.
Let's really dig into this linguistic aspect, because our source material dedicates a substantial section to what they call smoothing out common, yet highly unnatural, phrases that learners often rely on.
They highlight a massive glaring pitfall that, frustratingly, so many formal textbooks and translation apps actually teach.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Imagine you walk up to the sales counter holding that tiny crop top sweater. The traditional textbook tells you to look the cashier in the eye and say something like, "The size is incorrect."
Or even worse, "The size is wrong for my body."
Oh, yes. It's so bad. But I want to challenge that for a second, just to play devil's advocate. Why is it considered so terribly bad?
What do you mean?
I mean, structurally, the grammar is totally
Right.
fine, right? And factually, the size is incorrect. The label said medium, but the reality was extra small. So why can't I just say the size is incorrect?
Well, factually, you are right. The statement is not a lie, but conversational English isn't just about transferring facts, is it? It's about tone and relational dynamics.
Okay, that makes sense.
As the text analyzes, saying the size is incorrect relies on formal, almost diagnostic vocabulary. It sounds incredibly clinical.
It does have a very medical ring to it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, a surgeon looking at an x-ray and saying the bone alignment is incorrect.
Exactly. Or like a piece of diagnostic software reporting a mechanical failure on an automated assembly line. Error. The size parameter is incorrect for my human body.
Right. It completely lacks human warmth.
And in a retail setting, which is fundamentally a social interaction between two people, using diagnostic language creates an immediate, weird, and highly formal barrier between you and the retail worker. It just alienates the listener.
I see. It's not that the words are wrong, it's that the vibe is wrong.
The vibe is definitely wrong.
Yeah.
You are talking to a person folding shirts, not a compliance officer.
Right. So how do we fix the vibe? The source provides what they call a smooth upgrade, and it is wonderfully, elegantly simple.
It really is. Instead of the robotic diagnosis, you simply say, it doesn't fit.
Yes. Or if you want to be slightly more descriptive, you can say it's not the right fit.
The economy of words there is beautiful. It doesn't fit. It is human, it is natural, and it relies on idiomatic usage rather than literal translation.
It's so much softer, too.
Yeah.
It acknowledges the incompatibility between the clothes in your body without turning it into this sterile data point.
But the text doesn't just stop at these broad generalities. It dives into a series of core pocket words to help you describe exactly how a garment doesn't fit.
Which is crucial if you are asking the cashier to help you find a replacement. And the first pocket word they highlight is absolutely fascinating to me. Snug.
Snug is a remarkably complex word when you analyze its usage.
It really is. The text defines it as meaning slightly tight, but it carries a very specific connotation.
Yeah,
Right?
it often implies a tightness that is cozy, secure, or just slightly, almost imperceptibly restrictive.
Right. Context is everything with snug. Like, you wouldn't use it for something dangerous. You wouldn't say, oh, this blood pressure cuff is a bit snug.
Or that tourniquet is feeling quite snug. No, definitely not.
But a sweater, a pair of boots, they can absolutely be snug. The example the source gives is walking out of the fitting room and saying, it's a bit snug around the chest.
From a linguistic perspective, it is a brilliant rhetorical tool.
How so?
Well, it manages to convey a negative physical state, the reality that the clothing is too small and therefore unacceptable, without forcing you to use harsh, inherently negative vocabulary like tight, constricting, or small.
Oh, I see. I actually think snug is more than just a descriptive word. It functions as a highly effective diplomatic tool in a retail environment.
A diplomatic tool?
Yeah, think about the psychology of the interaction. When you march up to a register and tell a store representative that their clothes are painfully, impossibly small, it can inadvertently feel a little confrontational.
It can sound like you are insulting the garment or even criticizing the brand they work for.
Exactly. But if you smile and say, oh, it's just a bit snug, it's a much softer, gentler way of communicating the exact same logistical problem.
You're essentially employing politeness to mask criticism.
Yes, that's exactly it. You protect the feelings of the salesperson, you avoid insulting the brand's design choices, but you still make it crystal clear that a larger size is required. It's passive-aggressive in the most polite, productive way possible.
That is a very astute analysis of the power dynamics at play. By using Snug, you actively lower the emotional temperature of the interaction.
You prioritize a smooth transaction.
Right, you are prioritizing a frictionless transaction over expressing your raw frustration about being trapped in the fabric. However, the source material also explores the opposite end of the dimensional spectrum.
Oh, right. What is the protocol when the false friend sizing goes in the other direction? Like when the garment you tried on is comically excessively large.
This is where we get into some really fun visual language. But first, again, the source warns against those robotic, overly literal translations.
Right, so if the pants are huge, you absolutely should not look at the cashier and say it has too much space.
Which, again, is factually true but conversationally bizarre.
It sounds like you are a real estate agent describing an empty, echoing warehouse or like a vacant apartment, not a pair of trousers.
Ah, yes. This denim has wonderful natural light and far too much space.
Exactly. It just doesn't work at all.
The natural idiomatic phrasing here, according to the text, is to utilize adjectives like loose or baggy. For example, it's too loose in the waist, or the sleeves are a bit baggy.
But the text makes a really interesting and subtle distinction regarding the word baggy. Baggy often implies that the item is casually big.
Right, and in modern fashion, maybe you actually want it to be a little baggy. Oversized streetwear is a massive trend right now.
Totally. But what if the item isn't just fashionably relaxed? What if it is terribly, unwearably huge on you? For that extreme scenario, the source offers this incredibly vivid, dramatic colloquialism. You tell the cashier, it's swallowing me.
It's swallowing me. The imagery there is highly evocative.
I love it so much.
It conveys to the listener that the clothing is so overwhelmingly large, so dominant in its proportions, that the human being inside is physically disappearing into the fabric.
It's such a great phrase. I mean, imagine standing in front of one of those harsh, fluorescent-lit mirrors in a fitting room, wearing a winter coat that goes down to your ankles and extends past your fingertips.
A classic, terrible fit.
Right. You turn to your friend or the attendant and you just laugh and say, I can't buy this, it's swallowing me whole. It immediately injects a sense of humor and levity into the frustration of the moment.
It turns a failed shopping attempt into a shared joke. It really does build immediate rapport with the retail worker.
It definitely does.
However, while knowing how to describe the garment on your physical body, whether it is slightly snug, fashionably baggy, or actively swallowing you, is highly useful for deciding what to do while you are still inside the fitting room. It isn't necessarily the most powerful phrasing to deploy when you finally approach the sales counter for a return.
Which brings us to a really pivotal moment in the source material. The text delivers what they literally refer to as a golden phrase.
And calling it golden is really not an overstatement.
No, it's not. Because this single phrase has the power to completely shift the psychological dynamic of the entire conversation. Let's be honest for a second. When we go shopping and the clothes don't fit, the immediate instinctual reaction for most people is self-blame.
It's a very common psychological burden associated with retail spaces.
We look in the mirror and think, oh no, I gained weight, or my shoulders are too broad, or my body is just shaped weirdly. We internalize the failure of the fabric.
Right. The sizing system is treated as the objective authority, and the consumer's body is viewed as the variable that has failed to conform.
But the source material provides a brilliant linguistic escape hatch from that cycle of self-blame. Instead of walking up to the cashier and saying, I am too big for this medium, or my legs are too short for these pants, you use a specific phrase that shifts the blame entirely.
It shifts it away from your physical form and places it squarely onto the manufacturing processes of the brand itself. You weaponize the language to defend your ego.
I love that framing. You weaponize the language. And the golden phrase that accomplishes this is simply, it runs small. Or, conversely, it runs large.
Let's do a deep structural analysis of this phrase, because those three words are doing a tremendous amount of heavy lifting in the conversation.
Break it down for us.
When you state, this brand runs small, you are making an assertion about the company's production standards. You are indicating that the brand's general baseline sizing template is manufactured at a smaller scale than the universally accepted average.
So you are stepping out of the role of the insecure shopper and adopting the role of, like, an objective quality assurance inspector.
Precisely.
You aren't making a subjective emotional claim about your waistline. You are making an objective claim about the factory's output.
The underlying implication of the phrase is, the medium that I usually wear and that fits me perfectly at every other store represents standard reality.
Right.
Your brand's medium is a deviation from that standard reality. You maintain your status as the baseline, and the clothing becomes the anomaly.
It changes everything. Thinking about how this phrase functions, it really reminds me of the mechanics of writing a restaurant review.
Oh, that's an interesting parallel. Walk me through that.
Well, imagine you go out to a new restaurant on a Friday night, and you sit there for an hour waiting for your appetizer. The food is just taking forever.
Okay, I'm with you.
When you finally leave a review online, or when you complain to the manager, you don't say, I am a person who expects to eat too fast for this chef's artistic process.
No, you certainly wouldn't say that.
You don't take the blame for being impatient. No, you write, the service here runs slow.
Ah, I see. You externalize the inefficiency.
Exactly. You aren't complaining about your specific isolated meal as if it were a personal failing on your part to wait. You are making an informed, generalized observation about how the kitchen operates as a whole.
That's a great comparison.
Saying this sweater runs small operates on the exact same logic. It is an incredibly empowering, liberating phrase for you as a shopper. You become the critic, calmly observing the brand's eccentric quirks rather than the victim of a tiny, suffocating sweater.
That rhetorical framing completely changes your physical and emotional posture at the register. You are no longer apologizing for the dimensions of your body. You are simply, matter-of-factly, navigating a known quirk of the brand's specific sizing dialect.
It's so empowering.
However, as the source text quickly pivots to remind us, accurately diagnosing the problem and protecting your ego is really only step one of the process.
Right. You know it runs small, you've established that it's snug, and you feel good about yourself. But you still have a sweater you can't wear.
The problem remains.
Now you have to actually fix the logistical problem. You have to initiate the return at the register, which means we have to leave the linguistics of fit behind and introduce a whole new set of vocabulary. We're entering the vocabulary of the transaction.
And retail transactions fundamentally require two elements: undeniable proof of purchase and a strict adherence to politeness.
The text begins this section by outlining the essential paperwork or, digital documentation you absolutely must have.
Particularly if you are dealing with the complexities of an online order that you want to return in a physical space.
Yes, these are the vital administrative terms you need to memorize. First, obviously, is the receipt. We all know that one.
But the source specifically highlights two other crucial terms for digital shoppers.
Right, the return label and the packing slip. If you bought something on a brand's website and you decide to just walk into their brick-and-mortar store at the mall to return it, you had better have that packing slip in your hand or you are going to hit an immediate administrative wall.
The cashier physically cannot help you without the barcodes on that slip.
They just can't. So the physical or digital documentation is the key that unlocks the ability to reverse the transaction. But possessing the right piece of paper is really only half the battle.
The language you use when presenting that documentation is just as critical, if not more so. And it is here that the source material identifies what might be the single most dangerous transaction-derailing translation mistake a non-native speaker can make.
Oh, this one is rough. When I read this part of the guide, I actually physically cringed.
What's a common trap, though?
It is. The source brings up the incredibly clunky, high-friction mistake of walking up to a retail worker, putting the item on the counter, and stating, "I want you to return my money."
If we break down conceptually why this phrase fails so spectacularly, it comes down to the deep-seated cultural expectations of customer service.
Specifically within English-speaking cultures.
Exactly. In many languages, a direct, literal translation of that exact sentiment, stating your desire and demanding the corresponding action, might be perfectly acceptable, even expected. It's efficient.
But in English,
this level of directness is interpreted entirely differently.
the source notes that it sounds highly aggressive. And honestly, it doesn't just sound aggressive, it sounds like dialogue written for a villain in a movie.
Or a bank robber.
Yes. It sounds like a threat you would hear during a bank robbery. I want you to return my money. If you say that to a teenager working a cash register on a Tuesday afternoon, you are going to terrify them.
Or at the very least, put them immediately on the defensive. This touches on a fascinating area of linguistics known as politeness theory.
Oh, I've heard of that. Originally developed by Penelope Brown and Stephen Levinson, right?
Spot on. Politeness theory argues that all humans have a concept of face, essentially our public self-image. We have positive face, which is the desire to be liked and approved of, and negative face, which is the desire to be autonomous and not imposed upon by others.
Okay, so how does that apply to returning our crop top sweater?
When you ask a cashier to process a return, you are committing what's called a face-threatening act.
A face-threatening act. That sounds serious.
Well, you are imposing upon their negative face by asking them to perform a task for you. In English-speaking cultures, we use highly specific grammatical structures to mitigate that threat and soften the imposition.
How do we do that?
We heavily rely on modal verbs, words like could, would, might, and should.
So saying, I want you to return my money is a massive face-threatening act because it offers absolutely no mitigation. It's just a raw command.
Exactly. You are demanding a reversal of a financial transaction, which requires their willing cooperation. Demanding it strips them of their autonomy and guarantees friction.
The social contract of the store dictates that you must frame the demand as a gentle request.
Precisely. And so the text provides the smooth, polite upgrade.
Instead of staging a verbal bank robbery, you utilize those mitigators. You say, I'd like to get a refund, please. Or, formulate it even more softly as a question, could I get a refund for this?
You are still asking for your money, but you are wrapping it in layers of linguistic bubble wrap.
I love that. Linguistic bubble wrap. And the absolute magic word here, the core pocket word, is refund.
Refund. It is a highly specific transactional noun. It unambiguously means getting your actual cash back or having the exact monetary value returned to your original payment method, like your credit card.
But sometimes you don't actually want your money back. Sometimes you really love the sweater, you just need it in a size that won't violently compress your lungs.
Right, you just need a better fit.
And this is where we hit another critical vocabulary distinction in the source text that trips a lot of people up. A shopper, translating directly from their native language, might naturally hold up the sweater and ask the cashier, can I change this to another one?
Now, a seasoned retail worker will likely deduce what you mean from context clues. You are holding a small shirt and looking at the medium shirts.
Right.
However, the source rigorously points out that change is the wrong pocket word to use in this specific context.
I really want to challenge this because I found it confusing at first. Why does the word change cause confusion?
What is your logic behind using it?
Well, in my head, the logic is sound. I have a small sweater. I want a medium sweater. I am changing the small one for the medium one. I'm changing my clothes. Why is that considered linguistically incorrect at a cash register?
It comes down to the specific nuance and historical usage of the verb within the context of apparel. When you are discussing clothing, to ask someone to change an item heavily implies a desire to physically alter the garment itself.
Wait, like altering the fabric?
Yes. If you approach a counter and ask to change a pair of pants, the immediate linguistic implication is that you want to take them to an in-house tailor to be sewn, hemmed, taken in at the waist, or structurally modified in some physical way.
Oh, wow.
You are asking for a physical intervention on the textile.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I'm asking for an arts and crafts project, not a new item from the stockroom. I'm asking the cashier to get out a sewing machine.
Exactly. You are asking for an alteration, not a swap of inventory. Therefore, the correct pocket word provided by the text is exchange. An exchange is a purely administrative act. It is the logistical process of giving back one discrete item and taking a completely different discrete item, whether it is a different size, a different color, or a different style entirely in its place.
I'd like to exchange this for a medium. It's so incredibly clean. It's precise. It instantly removes any possibility that the worker thinks you want them to hem your pants. It categorizes the transaction perfectly.
However, the source material introduces a harsh dose of reality at this juncture.
Uh-oh. The reality check.
You can execute all of this preceding advice perfectly. You can master the politeness theory. You can use your modal verbs. You can ask for an exchange instead of a change. You can confidently present your neatly folded packing slip, and you can still encounter a massive, immovable roadblock.
Ah, yes. The dreaded retail trap. This is the moment in the source material where the cold, hard reality of corporate store policies comes crashing down on the optimistic shopper.
It happens to the best of us.
Sometimes, despite your flawless conversational English and your charming demeanor, you simply do not get the refund you want. The cashier smiles and says no.
And this scenario introduces our final and perhaps most intensely frustrating pocket word from the text, store credit.
Store credit. The absolute bane of my existence. The text defines this term clearly. It is the voucher, the digital code, or the physical gift card a store hands you when they flat out refuse to give you your actual cash back.
They keep your money in their bank account, but they give you a piece of paper that says you are allowed to spend that equivalent amount of money.
But exclusively within the four walls of their specific business.
From an economic standpoint, it is a highly effective mechanism for the business to retain the revenue of the initial sale, even if the specific product they sold entirely failed to satisfy the consumer.
It locks the consumer's capital into their ecosystem.
And the source illustrates the psychological toll of this policy with a highly relatable, almost tragic anecdote.
The $50 sock tragedy. This was, without a doubt, my favorite part of the entire source material.
It's a very cautionary tale.
So one of the shoppers in the guide tells a story about trying to return a jacket. The jacket didn't fit, so they brought it back. The problem was they originally bought the jacket on sale.
And the store had a strict, non-negotiable policy that clearance or sale items absolutely do not qualify for cash refunds under any circumstances.
Right. So the cashier takes the jacket, smiles, and hands the shopper a piece of paper worth $50 in store credit.
Which immediately forces the consumer back into the active purchasing cycle. It usually pressures them to buy items they do not actually want or need, simply to avoid feeling like they have lost the initial $50.
Exactly. The shopper describes standing there in the middle of the store holding this $50 voucher. They don't want another jacket. They don't really like the brand that much anymore.
But they feel forced to just buy something to use up the balance before they lose the slip of paper.
So they wander the aisles in a daze. And what do they end up buying? Socks. The shopper literally says, I ended up buying socks.
Oh.
So many socks. Just to use it up.
It perfectly encapsulates the sheer frustration of the store credit trap. It's like a Greek tragedy of modern retail.
It really is.
You walk into the building wanting your $50 back for a jacket that was fundamentally incompatible with your body, and you walk out carrying a lifetime supply of hosiery.
It is a hilarious but very real warning about why you need to ask the right questions and understand the policies before you hand over your credit card, lest you end up with a mountain of socks you didn't want.
A mountain of socks.
Now, to pull all of these disparate elements together, the sizing vocabulary, the politeness theory, the administrative terminology, the source material concludes with an extended step-by-step role play.
And honestly, it doesn't just read like a textbook exercise. It reads like a masterclass in applying all these conversational judo moves in real time.
It serves as a highly practical synthesis of the entire guide. We should analyze this role play organically, as it demonstrates exactly how a low-stress, highly effective interaction is structured and executed.
Okay, let's set the scene.
Imagine the bustling interior of a clothing store. A customer walks up to the counter. They don't just dump a pile of clothes next to the register and stare blankly.
No, they initiate the interaction with perfect politeness and context.
They say, I bought this sweater online last week, but I'd like to return it. It really doesn't fit.
If we pause and analyze the construction of that opening salvo, it is brilliant. They establish the logistical context immediately. I bought this online last week.
Right.
This instantly prepares the retail worker to navigate to a specific screen on their register to look for digital records rather than physical ones. Then they clearly state their administrative goal using a modal verb. I'd like to return it.
And finally, they provide the justification using the smooth upgrade we discussed earlier.
Okay.
It really doesn't fit.
It is highly efficient, perfectly polite, and removes all guesswork for the employee.
The cashier, who is now primed and ready to help, responds by asking a simple diagnostic question. They ask, was it too big?
And here is where the customer deploys the ultimate weapon, the golden phrase.
The customer smiles and says, actually, no, it runs really small.
Okay.
It's incredibly snug. It feels more like an extra small.
This is a textbook, flawless application of the core pocket words. Notice how the customer masterfully shifts the blame away from their own body and onto the brand by stating confidently, it runs really small.
Then they use the diplomatic descriptor, incredibly snug, which communicates the unwearable nature of the garment without insulting its design.
Finally, they provide a helpful comparative metric.
Okay.
Feels more like an extra small. There is no anger, there's no robotic diagnostic language, just clear, descriptive, ego-protecting communication.
It's so smooth. The cashier then asks if they want to do an exchange to find the right size. But the customer has decided they want out of this brand sizing ecosystem entirely.
They don't want a bigger sweater, they want their money.
So they say, I think I'd just like to get a refund, please. I don't think this style really suits me anyway. Boom, they use the magic word, refund.
And they threw in a very natural, polite please at the end to satisfy the negative face of the cashier.
At this juncture, the transaction is flowing beautifully. The cashier asks for proof, requesting the receipt or the packing slip. The customer is fully prepared, stating they have the email receipt pulled up and ready on their smartphone.
But then, just when you think they're going to walk out victorious, we hit the twist, the catch.
The cashier looks at the digital receipt on the phone, taps the screen, and begins to explain the corporate policy. She says, and I quote, "Just so you know, since it was an online purchase, I can only issue store credit here, in store."
If you want the actual money back on your credit card, you'll have to mail the sweater back to the warehouse using the return label.
This is the critical moment of tension in the role play. The customer is suddenly presented with a significant logistical obstacle.
The ideal outcome, a cash refund process immediately on the spot, is unavailable due to the rigid structure of the store's policy.
The customer is staring right down the barrel of the store credit trap. They're looking at the abyss of $50 worth of socks. They have to make a split-second choice.
Do they fight with the clerk, demand a manager, and create a scene? Or do they navigate the system they have been presented with?
And in the resolution of the role play, we see a masterful display of compromise. The customer smoothly accepts the situation.
They internally weigh the hassle and time required to go to the post office, print the label, and wait weeks for a refund against the immediate value of the money.
And they opt to take the store credit. They say, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know what? Store credit is fine. I saw some nice socks over there I can buy instead."
Wait, they actually bought the socks? It's a direct callback to the tragedy we discussed earlier.
I know. But I want to push back on this a little bit. Is this actually a win for the customer? I mean, they gave up. They wanted $50 back, and now they're buying socks they didn't come in for.
Didn't they just fail the negotiation?
Yeah. Isn't it better to just learn the postal vocabulary and mail the sweater back to get the real money?
That is a very valid critique of the outcome, but I would argue it is still a victory, just a victory of a different kind.
How so?
The customer wasn't a pushover. They made a conscious, informed choice. They successfully used the vocabulary to understand their available options clearly, and they made a low-stress decision to prioritize convenience over cash.
Okay, I see your point.
They avoided a screaming match, they avoided the post office, and they resolved the tension.
I suppose that's true. A peaceful exit with some nice socks is better than a stressful fight that ruins your afternoon.
Yeah.
When you analyze the flow of that entire interaction, it really is remarkably natural.
There is no arguing with store policy. There is no robot English creating weird social friction.
And the customer achieves a resolution without a spike in their heart rate. It proves that possessing the right linguistic tools doesn't just help you pass a grammar test. It directly impacts the quality of your real-world day-to-day experiences.
Precisely. So what does this comprehensive analysis mean for you, the listener? It means that returning items abroad or dealing with the complexities of international online shopping absolutely does not have to be the stressful nightmare you might have assumed it was.
That friction, that dread, that heavy anxiety we talked about at the very beginning of this discussion, the vast majority of that emotional weight comes from simply not having the exact natural phrases readily available in your pocket when you need them.
Exactly. Knowing the nuanced difference between asking for a change and asking for an exchange saves you from a confusing conversation about tailoring.
Understanding the diplomatic, face-saving power of the word snug keeps the interaction friendly.
Realizing that you can completely shift the blame and protect your own self-esteem by simply saying a garment runs small, these are not just esoteric vocabulary lessons.
They are highly practical tools for empowerment and self-advocacy in a retail environment.
When you know how to politely mitigate your demands with modal verbs, or when you know to always check your inbox for a digital packing slip before approaching the counter, you systematically remove the barriers to a successful transaction.
You don't have to quietly keep a sweater that looks like a restrictive crop top ever again, simply because you were too nervous or unsure of the vocabulary to talk to the cashier.
The source material ends with a really fascinating question designed to make the reader reflect on their own habits, and I think it is the perfect note to end on today.
Consider this. What is the absolute worst clothing purchase you have ever made? Like a truly disastrous fit that you ultimately kept and couldn't bring yourself to return?
We all have one. It is universally relatable. There is a garment hiding in the back of almost everyone's closet.
Oh man, I definitely have one. A pair of boots that are so tight I lose feeling in my toes after 20 minutes. I've moved apartments with them 3 times and never worn them.
But the crucial question isn't what the item is. It is why you kept it. I want you to deeply think about how language, or the lack thereof, shapes our physical retail experiences and our financial realities.
Often we keep clothes that don't fit, that swallow us whole, or that we simply hate, entirely because we lack the confidence or the precise vocabulary to comfortably navigate the return process.
We willingly accept the financial loss and the loss of closet space simply to avoid the linguistic friction and the social anxiety of the confrontation.
That is such a powerful, almost unsettling thought. The language barrier literally costs us actual money and physical space in our homes. We are paying a tax for our own linguistic insecurity.
But hopefully, after spending this time unpacking the mechanics of these interactions, that barrier is dismantled.
The next time you rip open a package, try on the garment, and realize you've been entirely betrayed by the false friends of international sizing, you won't panic. You won't resign yourself to keeping it. You will know exactly what to say and exactly how to say it.